This is the Real Estate Investing Abundance Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Allen. I just want to take a moment to introduce you to our company, Steed Talker Capital. Steed Talker Capital is a real estate investment firm. If you'd like to learn more about real estate investing, head over to our website, steedtalker.com. And while you're there, take a moment to get your one-page guide to the 10 steps to passive real estate investing. Downloading this PDF will also enroll you in our Enlightened Investor Circle, and by enrolling in the Enlightened Investor Circle, you'll be the first to know about any new investment opportunities that we are getting involved with. Look forward to hearing from you. Enjoy today's show. Hello, enlightened investors. Welcome back to Real Estate Investing Abundance. I'm your host, Dr. Allen, and I'm delighted to be back with you again today as we take a look at how we can optimize our cash flow to create more time freedom and more financial freedom. And with us today is our expert, Howard Polansky, and he helps people take control of their finances to put them in a much safer financial position by engineering the cash flows in their personal life. Howard is the CFO of the Cash Flow Optimizer. Howard, tell us about a memorable experience that helped you to be the person you are today.
Well, what comes to mind is I was about 12 years old and I was just getting interested in the stock market. And there was one stock, I can't even remember the name of it, can't remember the ticker symbol. And all I was doing was following it. Went up, it went down, it went up, it went down, but it was a penny stock. And I invested in it. And about 3 weeks later, I think I doubled my money. And I was like, this game's easy. And that was probably the worst thing that could have ever happened to me because greed there's a reason why it's one of the 7 deadly sins. And I wish that I had a much better understanding even back then in terms of saying slow and steady wins the race. Mm-hmm. And every time that I've learned to try and go swing big, doesn't seem to work out that great. So that's probably started the formative years in terms of the intrigue of personal finance, both good and bad.
Well, it's interesting that even as a 12-year-old, you were interested in finance and in the stock market. That seems pretty precocious to me. How did a 12-year-old come to even find an interest in the stock market?
I think my dad was just subscribed to the Wall Street Journal, the actual, printed paper. We're old enough to still remember that. And I would just see these ticker symbols and I had no idea what it meant. And I asked him, and next thing I know, I'm trying to follow some of these things but have no idea what the businesses mean or what they do or anything like that. But it was just fascinating to me. Yeah. So that and a love and an ease of math. And I just tried to put 2 and 2 together with my 12-year-old brain, whether it worked right or didn't. It was still a fascinating idea to me.
Well, that's a safe time to actually learn about the market because you could lose everything as a 12-year-old and it wouldn't be particularly devastating to your life goals and life experiences there. So wonderful experience there. Well, Howard, tell us about LOCs or the LOCs. How do they work and what are they?
Sure. So LOCs are lines of credit. And the easiest example of a line of credit is a credit card. So all a line of credit is just an open-ended tool that money is flowing through. So if we take that example of a credit card, you call up, get approved, have a $10,000 credit line. That first month, you purchase $3,000 of goods and services. At the due date, if you don't pay that $3,000 off, you still have $7,000 available in the line. Now, I call that availability access to cash. But once you pay the $3,000 off, you now have the full $10,000 available again. So money is flowing in and flowing through an open-ended tool. Other examples of lines of credit is a business line of credit. If you're a business owner, you've been open a couple of years, it's relatively easy to get. And the one that I use, and that I teach people how to use creatively and effectively is a home equity line of credit. And I was able to utilize that to get my house payment down to $24.19. And that kind of started this journey in terms of people asking, I see it. I don't understand how you did it. You have to help me. And I was like, okay. And next thing I know, I'm helping people. So yeah, so that's what a line of credit is. It's another tool in the toolbox, but people, the way that it's marketed and the way that people use it, they don't realize the strategy and intentionality that you can use to make a massive difference in your life.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, most people are using their line of credits for the benefit of the debtor, not themselves. I don't mean I mean the debt holder, not the debtor. I'm sorry. So give us just, I guess, a brief idea of how you took your home equity line of credit to reduce your overall mortgage payment.
Number one, what we have to understand is that the way that I did it. So let me start with me personally, and what has changed since I started is I had a traditional first position mortgage,
Mhm.
and I quote unquote refinanced into a first position home equity line of credit. So I broke open the titanium safe. I got the key to be able to open the safe. And so I went from a closed-ended tool to an open-ended tool. And that makes all the difference in the world, because when a bank or an institution sets you up with a mortgage, you're told this is the payment that you have to make each and every month, no matter what is happening with your financial situation.
Mhm.
That's just this big rock that you're trying to navigate around every single month. And instead, when you have a HELOC in place, all you have to do is just pay the interest to satisfy the bank. But because it's now an open-ended tool, you can put all of your income in, not just the payment. So let's use an example of a household that brings in $15,000 a month. That this is after taxes are taken out, medical, 401k, all of that. This is what actually hits their checking account every single month to spend, invest wherever they want. And they have a house payment of $3,000. If they're early in the 30-year time frame of a mortgage, about $900 to $1,000 of that $3,000 is going against paying the debt down. But that's only $900 of $15,000 that's pushing the debt down. And instead, when you have this open-ended tool, because you know the money you put in today, you can get back out tomorrow, you can put all $15,000 in there.
Hmm.
And when you do that, you're lowering the overall debt balance. And every loan that's ever created, what a bank is doing is saying, what is the balance at the end of the day? And multiply that by the annual interest rate divided by 365 to figure out what is the interest per day you're charged. So if you have a $300,000 mortgage, you're going to be charged $300,000 times whatever that interest rate is for 30 days. But if you have 15,000 going in, now you're being charged interest on 285, not 300.
Mm-hmm.
But we do live. We still have expenses. We still have food and utility and gas. And, if you got those little rugrats, or, sometimes you call them the little devils of children, that you sometimes don't want to take care of, but you still do. So you do have expenses. And so you take the expenses out of the line, and the balance will shoot up for a few days. But that overall monthly average is drastically less than 300,000 in our example. And so the surplus stays inside the line versus just staying in a checking account.
Mm-hmm.
And all you do is just rinse and repeat month after month after month. And you can all of a sudden whittle away what were these giant rocks and get them done in a fraction of the time versus the standard way it's being done. So that's the guts of the system.
Well, that is fascinating. So essentially, you're using your HELOC as you would use a checking account.
That's exactly it. That is the statement that I make.
And that is, I mean, I can see how that is going to make a huge difference in paying down the balance of that debt. and a totally different way of looking at your mortgage than the typical 30-year mortgage or even the 15-year mortgage. It's
Yeah,
significantly
and
different.
so what happens is because, there's been, if you've lived in your home for, especially let's call it the last 6, 7 years, there's a tremendous amount of equity that has
Mhm.
been built up just from, appreciation.
Right.
And so that's just an untapped reservoir that you can now utilize. And so if you have car payments, if you have student loan debt, if you have medical debt, if you have credit card balances you're not paying off each month, and all of a sudden you realize, wait a second, I've got two, three, $400,000 of access to cash I didn't know I had.
Mhm.
Now, all of a sudden, and this is where the really big shift comes, is that we can consolidate all of this instead of spreading your money everywhere. Now I'm trying to get people to be like a laser
Mhm.
and just have it all pointed in one spot. And so if you can get rid of all of these fixed payments and now have it all in one spot, now all of a sudden you can just attack in one area.
Mhm.
You're not spread. If your dollars are soldiers, your soldiers aren't going everywhere. Now they can just attack the one spot and kill this.
Mhm.
And so once we get past level one, now it's really talking to a community like yours in terms of, well, great, I can see how fast I'm paying this down, but at some point, I don't want to work forever either.
Mhm.
And now we can talk about the passive income side. And that is, what we're really doing is building the opportunity fund so that when, you present a multifamily property, or if it's self-storage, or if it's the stock market goes down 40%, or, you want to invest in crypto. I don't care where you invest, but it's once you find an opportunity that like, and then trust the operator. Most importantly, you say, great, it's a $50,000 investment. Where does it come from? It comes from the line of credit.
Mhm.
And so instead of having to do ready, aim, fire, I teach people it's ready, fire, and then reload. You have this availability, but where do you pull it from? You pull it from the line of credit, but then you can pay yourself back. So
Mhm.
you don't have to miss out
Mhm.
on, trying to go from the active income to the passive income.
Any specific or special qualifications for doing these kind of things?
Well, number one, in terms of getting a HELOC specifically, you do have to show income because we do have to deal with banks and they go back to a debt to income ratio. So if you were looking at retiring or looking to sell your business or change careers or whatever it is, we'd want to get this set up ideally 3 to 6 months before you make that switch because the bank looks at what's today. They're not looking at once you close, then you quit. Well, they based it on what they knew, even if you knew you were going to do something differently. So that's the first thing. My personal preference, if you're asking what's my avatar and people that work with me, ideally a household income of 150,000 or more, and they're already pretty good stewards of their money. They understand income needs to be less than expenses on a consistent basis. That's not to say sometimes you need a new roof or car repair. You might be negative for a month or two. That's okay. But you have the emergency fund. You're already putting away for retirement. You just have this extra cash flow and you don't know what to do with it. Great. That's a perfect client because it's, again, we get things lined up. We increase the cash flow by rearranging some stuff. And now when you're ready to find the next opportunity, all you're doing, as I said, is you're building that opportunity fund up until now you're ready to strike.
Enlightened investors, if you haven't done so already, be sure and click that like button and also click that share so others can take advantage of the content. And finally, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single one of our upcoming episodes. Howard, give us some specific examples of individuals that you have worked with.
Sure. One that comes to mind is a gentleman. He helps run an agency in the financial space, one of the executives, and lives in a lower cost of living area in the US, more Midwest. To kind of give an example, his truck payment was almost as much as his house payment. Okay. So I'll let you kind of guess in terms of where, but you'll probably have a pretty good idea. Because the cost of living was so low, excellent cash flow, very, very stable business. All right. Had about 28 years left on his mortgage, had 5 years left on his truck. And I looked at what we can do and I said, would you like to be debt free in about 3.5 years? And of course, the immediate response is, that's not possible. And I said, no, it is. We're rearranging how the money is moving. I'm not asking you to triple your salary. If you do, great. Okay. But it's one of those, I just take what we know now and we start working together and we're right on track. And he's like, I can't believe how easy this is. And I was like, yeah, but it's all just a mindset shift. Really what it is. I mean, it's the same thing that the evolution of your life is, that you've just shifted your mind to say, I don't know if the stock market can really do everything for me. I think if I've got consistent cash flow, that's what I live on. It was just a mindset shift. Why I bring up this specific example is that their 10-year anniversary is this summer. And so he asked me last year, hey, what were we budgeting for our 10-year trip? And I looked and I said, before I give you the answer, let me just kind of tell you what you had. But then I played around with the numbers and what you can do. All right. You budgeted $10,000 for your 10-year trip. Should be a nice vacation. But I said, what if you doubled it to 20,000? It's a momentous time. It would change your debt-free date 2 to 3 months. Take the freaking trip of a lifetime. Don't worry about what it costs, because I'm still saving you 25 years from how you were doing things before. And that's really what I'm hoping people get out of our conversation today, is that, like, however you define freedom, that's what I'm here to try and do, is make that idea of freedom happen so much sooner than you could ever anticipate. And again, your version of freedom, Alan, is going to be different from the other guests that you've had on, to the clients and investors that are with you. Everyone's got their version of what freedom is. And all I'm here is to try and make that idea happen decades sooner.
Yeah. I mean, you had mentioned that it's a mindset shift. Actually, it's, from my listening to this, it's not really necessarily a mindset shift, because you're not really asking anyone to change their lifestyle, to change their daily habits. All you're doing is having them change from the way that the banking system says we have to set up our life and our lifestyles, to utilizing the existing banking structure in a different and a unique way. But as in terms of sacrificing more, there's nothing in this plan that is asking anyone to sacrifice more. They're not taking more out of their daily expendable income. They are just shifting that banking practice to a way that probably bankers are probably not particularly happy with you. That's what I'm guessing.
Yeah, there's not many of us that do what I do. And so I am friends with one of them. I mean, literally, when I say there's probably a dozen of us that teach this, I don't think I'm stretching the truth. But one of my friends, he was actually at a convention for Wells Fargo managers. And he got up there and said, do you think I can use a 15% credit card to pay off a 3% mortgage faster? 800 people in the audience, not one hand goes up. And he is up there for the next 40 minutes explaining how to do this. I will not tell you how much Wells Fargo offered him to basically shut him up, but he said no. Life-changing amount of money. He said, no, I'm not here to help you. I'm here to help the average person. And that's really what I'm here to do also, is just that you said it exactly right. It's the banks and the financial institutions have set up the game board, and they've done it to their benefit. And all I've done is look at the game board and say, okay, how are the rules played? What are the other tools that they allow us to use? And now I'm screwing them with them. I mean, that's plain and simple. That's it. But more importantly is that I'm teaching and guiding other people on the system, on how this works, so that they can use it again to get to their freedom sooner.
Well, it's not that you're screwing them. They're still making money.
But let them make money on everyone else who doesn't want to learn this.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Howard, you have a lot to offer. So tell us exactly what your services are and how it is that our audience can get in touch with you to take advantage of your services.
I do what I call a discovery call. It's 100% complimentary because I don't know if I can help you until I have your numbers to know if I can help you. And I always go back to a question that James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, that I heard a few months ago. Do I need to spend more time gathering better information, or do I need to spend more time acting on the information I already have? And so I'll answer both parts. The first part is you may have never heard of anything like this. And so you're like, I need better information. This is why I do the discovery call. 100% complimentary. I get all the numbers out of you that we need. I do all of the analysis. I let you know in terms of how much cash flow can be improved, when your debt-free date is. And again, I want to throw in a small caveat. I'm not the Dave Ramsey poster child that says everyone has to be debt-free, but I do have to lead people in a direction. And so I lead towards being debt-free, not that you have to. So, but I let you know in terms of the debt-free date. And at that point, you have the better information. Question is, what are you going to do with it now? Are you going to just stay on the path that you know and get to those dreams someday? Or you take action and potentially shave decades of time? That's up to you. In terms of, if you want to know a little bit more on and the 3 reasons or the 3 rules on why this works, I've got a complimentary ebook where you can go to cashflowcoachusa.com/book. Simple email and you'll get that. And finally, my phone number. You can text me. It's actually my number, I swear. 512-608-1020. Just let me know you heard me on Alan's podcast. Love to set up a discovery call and give me your email address and I'll send you a calendar link and we'll get together. So that's the ways to get me.
Excellent. So we had talked about the HELOCs. And is it true that this has to be a personal residence, or are there other ways to use HELOCs on a vacation home, a second home, or even an investment property? And this is a second question, but if you can address both of these. What if they don't have a W-2, they're a business person with a good income, but they just don't have the income to show to the bank like the bank likes to have it?
Excellent question. So to answer your first question, yes, this can be done on secondary homes, rental homes, vacation homes. Sometimes the loan to value might be a little bit less just because you have to remember from a bank perspective, it's all about risk. If someone's got 2 homes and they're in dire straits, which one are they going to keep first? They're going to keep the primary home over the secondary. So they may lend or give a line that's going to be a little bit smaller on a secondary home than the primary, but it can be done. With some of the institutions that I work with, they can maneuver and realize the discretionary earnings of an owner and take that into consideration. Again, if you're going to be a business owner, you'd have to at least be in business for at least 2 years realistically for this to happen. So if you're, quit your W-2, you just started your business, you're only 6 months in, this is going to be a tough hurdle to climb. But if you've been in business, 2, 3, 5, 10 years, then yeah, the bankers that I work with, they can rearrange it to know what's the real income that you have.
One important question here. This just sounds wonderful, but what are the risks?
Great question. So there are 4 major risks to this. Number 1 is you have to have the cash flow. It starts with just basic math. If your income is not greater than your expenses on a consistent basis, then this does not work. Plain and simple. Number 2, the interest rate does move. It moves with the Fed. So when I started this, interest rates were quite low. 2022, if you've seen anything in the news, you've noticed that interest rates have gone up dramatically. But let me just use my personal situation and my house payment. In 2021, when interest rates were still low, my house payment on average was $350 a month. In 2022, even with all the interest rate increases, my average house payment was $500 a month. In 2023, I anticipate it'll be around $750 a month. And so I'm not going to ask you, Alan, in terms of what, if you still have a mortgage, but let's just pretend that it was $3,000 a month, which I think is not too unrealistic. Mm-hmm. Which is easier to pay? My variable payment that's now $750 or your fixed payment of $3,000? I'm not asking which one's paying the debt down. I'm just asking which is easier to pay on a monthly basis, $750 or $3,000. And so because I understand the risk of this, I have no issue with the interest rates moving, but I know it's always a big question. Risk number 3, a line of credit can get closed. To not drag this out, basically you were hearing the national headlines from the mega banks. But if you deal with small regional banks, community banks, credit unions, I've spoken with enough of them now across the country that if they were there during COVID, and it's always a blessing if I find someone who was with that bank back in 2008, 2009, usually the answer is we didn't do anything if they were good stewards with the line. And, so you hear what you want, you hear what they want you to hear, but then there's the reality of what was going on. The final risk, the biggest risk, you raid the piggy bank. So I've got an acquaintance, I use that term very loosely. At one point, the husband was part of the Watch of the Month Club, and they currently have a car lease payment of $1,300 a month. Not owning, a car lease. And if you got them in a corner and asked them why are you doing this? It does not take long to get to the real truth, to impress our circle of friends. And the problem with that is that there's no end game to that. And so if I showed this couple, they would start the system, they would raid the piggy bank, and they come back and say, Howard, this doesn't work. I look at them and say, no, you're just an idiot. You're an idiot that happens to make a lot of money, but you're still an idiot.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if you're hearing this, because you know you better than I know you. And if you're hearing this and your next thought is, if I've got this giant wad of cash, I'm going to buy my next Lamborghini. Unless your business is flipping Lamborghinis or your income and the cash flow that you have supports purchasing the Lamborghini, don't buy the Lamborghini. So there has to be some diligence on your own part and just logic that you can't blow the wad, or you can really get yourself in big trouble.
Howard, it's been delightful having you today, and thank you for opening our eyes to alternative ways of utilizing the banking system for our benefit rather than the banks. It's been a delight having you and wonderful meeting you, Howard.
Alan, thank you so much.
Enlightened investors, don't go yet. I have just a couple of quick requests. You know the drill. Like, share, and subscribe. But we also need your help to build our audience, so please go to your favorite podcast app and leave us a 5-star rating and review. I'll be most grateful. Until next time, prosper and live abundantly.
Thank you for tuning in to Real Estate Investing Abundance, brought to you by Steve Talker Capital, a company working for passionate professionals like you to develop financial independence built on solid, passive real estate investments. As part of our efforts to make the world a better place, Steve Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine. These endeavors attempt to enhance the human treatment of horses worldwide. Steve Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures, great and small, flourish abundantly. For resources to develop your financial independence, connect with us at stevetalker.com.